metal. Okay, cool. We can do that. Bing. Let me get our virulence out of the way real quick. So using only Prochrome paints for doing non-metallic silver. Obviously, black is your friend and your grays. So black, dark neutral gray, probably some dark warm gray, and then bright neutral gray. So our 4 basic gray tones, right? White for spec highlights at the very end. Blue black, the new color, is amazing for this. And then depending on how blue you want it, and I guess we'll talk about that as we go, right? Because there's a way that you can do your non-metallic, your white metals, silver, tin, things like that, that are able to have a bluish tint will make them look cleaner, maybe more polished in certain circumstances, although you can also do it on like cast iron, and give it a little bit of a bluish hue, and it can look dirty and cast and not, polished at all. But so that's a decision that you can make early, or you can choose to glaze it on afterwards. I have recently, right, we've been using a lot of the blue black and mixed in with like dark gray blue, so that you can get just kind of dark metallics out of it, dark steel, I guess we'd call that. Right? Because that's not polished, but it still gives me the reflectiveness of like a beat up metallic on his big arm and on the knee plate there and stuff like that. And so we'll kind of approach it like this first. Of course, we'll make it a little bit brighter. This was intended to be dark steel on the orc. We'll brighten it up a little bit. So the first thing, how do we want to show you this? How do you want to learn this, Ski? How do you want to learn this, Ski? Because there's so many ways to do this. We're just going to go through the basics, right? We're going to use this as a way to just kind of walk through the steps that I get in my head as I'm realizing that we didn't paint his toes right now. See how my brain works? I'm staring at this model going, we did all this work on the skin and we didn't paint his toes. Did anybody else notice that and not tell me that? You bastages. So there's a lot of different ways that you can handle this. One of the easiest ways as you're starting to do non-metallic metal of any kind, forget the kind of metal, because it really is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, whether it's gold or silver or copper or bronze or whatever. Those are just colors for the most point, right? There are certain things that you have to know in how bronze weathers versus copper, because there's a copper component to bronze, but it doesn't tarnish the same way that pure copper does. There's tin in bronze, but it doesn't tarnish the same as pure tin does. How does silver tarnish? Silver tarnishes in like grays and blacks, whereas gold can tarnish in like blacks and dull greens. Copper verdigris, and bronze gets like that dull grayish blackish as well. And in tins weathering can get a little bit of verdigris, but not as much. So there's things that are component parts of various metals that you need to know if you're going to that nth degree with how you're weathering it and how to pull it off as like a realistic version of that metal, realistic gold, or whatever. But for the most part, what we're talking about is reflective material, okay? And so you hear me say this all the time. How do we paint reflective material? Something that bounces light off of the surface back at the eye to appear shiny, right? And so how do we recreate that with paint that is not naturally shiny? Because the difference is that metallic paint has a shininess to it. It has a reflectivity to it, right? It has little bitty mica or aluminum flakes in it that will reflect light back at your eye and give it that shine, right? So it's just like looking at this pen vise is made out of metal. Metallic paint has metal in it and will reflect light back at you. So it creates the effect by being a reflective surface. But when you're using non-reflective paints to paint a reflective looking surface, your first goal is to identify where those reflections are. And now, what are some things that can be reflections? Okay, Triumphant Toad, what is going on? Thank you for that sub. Thank you. Mechanic asked, quick question on your forge loader, is the smoke optional? It is. Yeah, the smoke is definitely optional. And where it connects, you can actually drill out the exhaust post if you don't want to have it on there, but still have the exhaust look like they'd be usable. They're solid, like, GW style exhaust, right? They don't have a hole drilled in them at the beginning, but you could bore out that hole and make them usable like that, sure. Yeah, you don't have to put the smoke on. It's a separate piece. Right? So in doing reflections, here's another tripping point. Most people think reflection is bright. Not always true. What else is reflective? Like, what else is indicative of a reflective surface? This is a question to the class. Class, you in the back, answer my question. So what do we get? We get bright light reflection, like where the light bounces off the metal and it comes back at the right angle. We get that bright glare. What else do we get? Shadows. Yep, GDAX, shadows. They're not really shadows. They're dark reflections of objects in the near field, right? In the near ground, foreground, right? So if we have a reflective object, right, like the spoon, let's get our spoon out, right? What do we see on this spoon? We see bright reflection, which is this light and this light. These are two of my desk lights right here, right? What else do we see? We see me over there in the background, moving my head around. See that? See this dark spot right by where my finger is right there? That's my head. That's not a shadow. That's the reflection of an object in the foreground, or the near ground, you call it, right? The closer that object becomes, the more of the color of that object is shown in the reflection. But even look like this, even right up close to the object, right? Even with light bouncing off of it, right? The reflection is always darker than the actual thing, right? But you start getting color, whereas as further my hand and finger go away, they just become a dark object in the back. See that on the spoon? So the more reflective it is, the more things will show up on it, the more darkness and brightness you will have, and the more contrast between those things you will have, because the bright object becomes more confined to what it is. This is a round light, right? Which light is that, by the way? I don't know. I don't know what light. Good God, there's lights everywhere in here, right? I think that's this one. Yeah, okay. So this is a round light up on the desk. It's this round light over here. This one, right? Now I've screwed the camera up. Right, there we go. All right. It's this one over here, right? But the shape of this lamp is actually round. So the shinier the object is, I get the actual shape of the thing that's making the light. So if this were the sun in the sky, it would appear more round, the more reflective it is. The more dull it is, and I wish we used to have paint all over this spoon, so it appeared dull on one side versus not so dull on the other, but we don't have that anymore. Where is the pencil? Here's the pencil, right? So this pencil, on the other hand, is dull metallic. It's like spun aluminum or stainless, brushed stainless steel. So notice here, we're not going to get like a circle of light anywhere, right? We're just going to get brightness, right? Because it diffuses across this entire surface. There's little surface imperfections that make the surface of a reflective or like solid surface dull or reflective. Like if it was mirror polished, like a shiny spoon would be, it's because it's been polished. And if you looked at it under a microscope, all of the molecules of metal, all the particles had been polished to lay flat. And so they all are flat surface. So when light hits, it bounces back at one angle off of that, right? This is curved, so it's a little bit different. Whereas if you get spun, like dull looking metal, when you look at it under a microscope, it will be rough looking. There will be a texture to the metal at the microscopic level. So when light hits it, light bounces around amongst all those microscopic textures and radiates out in bunches of different directions at once. It's like putting a filter over the lamp. Whereas if you looked at the lamp without the filter, it would, and you'd get that sunspot of a round lamp. You put the filter over it, you can look right at it. When you close your eyes, you see more of a big glare area. It diffuses the light. So all of the particles in the metal that are reflecting the light off of the surface in random directions, right, makes that more dispersed, which in this case can make the whole surface turn bright when I point it at the light, whereas the spoon will just show me that light, right next to each other, right, will just show me that light, right, and I get the reflection of the ceiling and all the areas around the light as well. Whereas this diffuses it and we just get light, boom, right? So they're both shiny, but they reflect in totally different ways. On this, I probably won't get anything that is as stark of a contrast no matter where I hold it. Here I'm starting to get some darkness, right? But notice it's never going to be as dark or as much contrast as the more reflective spoon surface, right? So here, in terms of painting, what's happening? I have this bright reflection up here, and then a gentle fade down to a mid-dark, and then out of the dark, a gentle fade to a brightness again across this surface. And that would give you dull steel, right? Here, it's a very abrupt change. So here I'm painting white and then just a very brief blend to where I'm going to my darkest color. Not black, but dark grays, and you're seeing yellows and greens and blues and all sorts of crazy crap here, right? But your dark reflection is there and you don't have much of a blend between the two. The more stark that contrast becomes from super bright to super dark gives you the feel of more reflective surfaces, right? Now you don't want to paint it, you still want to put some blend in there, right? Because the eye is seeing a little bit of a halo around there that's giving it a blend. It's very, very short, but you're starting to notice not much blending from light to dark on this. So the less blending you do, the more reflective it's going to be, the shinier, the more polished it becomes. The more blending you do between light and dark, the more dull the surface becomes, until eventually it just looks like it's painted gray as opposed to being shiny at all, right? Because some of this that we're not focusing on right now is the fact that we have an edge highlight. See, this edge highlight comes out of that reflection and comes down here and then eventually disappears and then comes back right here as we get close here. Same thing on this side, that edge highlight runs right up along here, then it gets dull and then it snaps back in right around this shine line here. Right? So with that edge highlight that comes up, that's part of what gives you the feeling of being a solid surface reflecting light. If you did this fade without the edge highlight, you'd wind up looking like it was just painted, you know, gray to white or something. Right? So now let's put that into effect. Okay, that's a lot of talking. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move forward? That is the fundamental, like, basics. Like if you were going to take a non-metallic class with me, that's where we start, is understanding reflective surfaces, right? Pistafa, what's going on? Is it Pistafa? I like that name, by the way. The name was Pistafa. I just want it to be pronounced Pistafa. So if I'm mispronouncing your name, I'm sorry, not sorry, because that's awesome. Thank you for the follow. Right? Waiting for the spoon to bend so you can prove I have magical powers. Glitch in the matrix. All right. So because it's really reflective surfaces, because what happens is that a lot of people get hung up on the non-metallic metal terminology. I want to do non-metallic silver, and you get good at that, but then you can't do non-metallic gold. If thought about in the proper sequence, every reflective surface becomes something that you can do once you get the kind of fundamentals I just taught you. Now, through practice and perseverance, you start to put that into play, and you start seeing more and more out of it, right? So what we'll do is we'll work on an edge here, and we'll do this top edge as both kind of reflective and as dull, right? We'll just kind of play around with it. All right, so let's grab, it's already black primered, so let's grab a little bit of dark neutral gray. You can only do gold right now, but you do gold very well, then you can definitely do silver. It's just your choice of colors is not matching with your what you're expecting your style to be, right? Because they do the exact same thing. So if you can do gold, you can do silver. You can do any color, right? Because if your gold looks like gold metallic, then your silver has no excuse not to, except for finding the way to do the colors correctly, right? We're gonna basically say that given him standing up, right, we can kind of use the model as a resource. It's gonna shine right here, so we're gonna get our brightest shine right in here along the point, right? Then we're gonna fade it back up to a darker midline right in here, and then go back up to brightness as we get up towards the top to get that dull metallic, okay? So the first thing I'm gonna do is just kind of squib in some gray in here towards the center area. And I'm not wet blending or anything. We're just going to play with colors here. And the first thing we can do, let's just go ahead and put in some of the other paints out here on the palette too. We'll do the dark warm gray and the bright neutral gray. All right, so grab some dark warm gray real quick. All right, and this dark warm gray will come right out of this. And also up towards this end. And we'll get a little bit of bright neutral gray. All right, and then we want to maybe we'll get lucky and we can get this to blend a little bit. Not bad. G-Dax, what is going on? Grins with the gift sub. Grins, what's going on? G-Dax. Awesome. Russ, what did you just say? The hell? What the hell? What are we talking about? When doing non-metallic metal, is it a case of the more colors, reflections, the better? Is there a point you can add in too much and lose the effect? Depends on the model, I think, right? I feel like you can probably add in too much and not enjoy your final kind of product. Scale, for me, is the big question there. Like on 28 mil miniatures, I don't bother to add in much color in the reflection because you don't have enough area to really tell that story. In most cases, it's not always the case. Like you can fake it, right? But in a big sense, you wind up not being able to really pull that off well. You got to be careful. But certain models, tend to allow that to be not the case. You can make it happen. Larger busts, where you've got more surface area in the non-metallic. You can start to see, like, real quick, just blocking in your colors, you can find that, okay, that could be very dull metallic right there, right? You don't have to really try much harder than that. I mean, this is really rough blend, so I haven't really spent any time, but just blocking it in, I can feel like, oh yeah, that kind of works. I dig it. Maybe we take a little black. Right. If I take a little black and just maybe right in our darkest area, I can kind of darken that up, right there. So for dull metallic, this is the mentality, right? Now, obviously, you'd focus on your blends better, whatever. We got that to kind of wet blend for us a little bit. I guess we should actually do this a little bit more conclusively here. Let's get a little bit of color. I'm over here mixing a little bit of the bright neutral gray in with the dark warm gray to get a in-between color there. And we have this edge right here, right? At the top of the bevel of the blade here. Also technically an edge that needs highlighting. We just do it all with that kind of mid-tone gray. Then we grab our brighter gray. Right. We can add in a little bit more texture on the blade where it's got scratches or dings or whatever. Just flattened out my brush, kind of have it like right? It's just flattened out. So it's a nice, super sharp taper here, but flattened out here. So I can just kind of tap it right along that area there and get very, very faint kind of dotted lines because of the way that the bristles are separated. So that makes it really easy. Just to get some micro textures in there to make it a little bit more beat up, something like that. This has like another piece that would be bronze here. Is why I didn't carry that line up. I don't know if that's super readable on the model, right? But notice how it's got coming up off of the pommel and grip, it has another plate that is there. So that's why this edge doesn't continue on. So that's what we got right now. So you can see how just very, very quickly you can block it all in and get an idea. And this is the kind of study that you want to do as you're learning and you're grasping the shape of, a particular piece of metal or whatever it is you're doing. Find the area, start asking yourself. We didn't really block it in bright first. We started with the midtones and then glaze or kind of wet blended into the brighter colors, right? But moving that way gets it to be very, very dull. Okay, make sense? I don't want to go too far past that before hearing if that makes sense to people. What's that?
Is it okay if I put...
As long as you're not making box noises.
Their boxes are all folded.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Like in bags and stuff? Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Just so you're here talking with us is the big thing. Jen's like, I get lonely out there. Russ, hopefully one day you get to talk through non-metallic metal in person. You think it's the only way you'll ever get it? You learn best in person? Yeah. I mean, for some people, just the act of doing it, like sitting next to me, is one of the things that really makes it work. Because you can ask the question as the need arises. Like, I'm making this brushstroke. What do I do right here? Oh, blend that. And then what do I do right here? Blend that. The thing is, and we talk about this a lot, sometimes, like if we all had this model sitting at home and you're painting this, you guys could all do that. I mean, I didn't put any time on that. Boom, and it kind of looks rough metallic, whatever, right? I mean, we could tighten the blends up and make that look beautiful. But you get it, right? It starts looking like it would be a silverish metallic, right? Now, the thing is, if all you do is pay attention to bright up top, bright down below, blended softly to dark, and then out of dark to bright again, because that's all we did here, right? We blended from bright to dark, dark to bright. And then we edge highlighted it. Right? I did a two-stage highlight. The highlight's brighter towards the shine spot here and then dims out towards the middle and then starts coming back and gets brighter towards the edge up top. Okay? Same thing down here. So everything we saw on the pencil, right, is what we did here. Right? I probably can't get the pencil to do that same. Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. Ta-da! Bright on one end, bright on the other end, dark in the middle. That's what we did. We just recreated the pencil, right? So you can do that, but now you know how to paint this one shape, right? So the question was asked, how would you do the bottom of the blade, GDAX says. So how about like the underside, like here, GDAX? Is that what we're asking? Okay, cool. We'll do that next. Let me get Jen's cam on. Hang on, give me just a second. Ta-da! Jen. Turn Jen's mic on. Jen's mic is on. Say hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
She did it. When are you going to sell a Monument Hobbies example mechanical pencil? That would be great, Dan. That's like, I think you've hit it on the head. Grins. The funny part, I gave Fuse to give the wait a minute. GDAX, the funny part, you gave Fuse the tut to give away, and you won a prize early in the stream, and won my tut I gave away even that. What is a tut?
Tut.
You won a prize that you put in stream? I forget, but maybe. That's not impossible.
Tutorial.
Oh, because you won a tutorial with me. A one-on-one is what you won, right?
Oh, a long time ago.
And then you won it? I feel like I do remember something like that. Darth Mullet, you came on, you can't rib me for the paint. I know, right? It's available.
Aptifine, my pleasure. Hope you got some stuff that you enjoy that will keep you busy while you are
Oh, I got all my stuff in
staying
your way
safe
over
at
here.
home. Stuck at home.
I don't think your mic's in the right location. You're kind of getting cut off.
That's where I always put it.
Yeah. Talk.
Hello?
Okay.
Is it good? Can you hear me?
Can you hear Jen?
Can you hear me now?
All right, so let's do the underside now. So again, looking at it, the underside, because of its bevel away from the light, right? Look at how dark the underside is, right? So in a lot of cases, we're not going to use the same brightness. Could you fudge it? Yeah, you could. We're just going to go ahead and paint the whole thing with this dark neutral gray. I'm going to take a little bit of dark warm gray and give me a spot back here. Then I'm going to kind of blend in. I am wet blending now. You don't have to, but because we're working fast, this is some of the best method for me to get the point across. A little bit of the bright neutral gray. Just a little bit. Not wet blending anymore because the paint's dry on the front here. I'm just taking a little bit of that dark warm gray, fudging it in right at this tip. Take a little bit more dark warm gray, edge the whole thing. So still working with dark warm gray.
Russ, I think they're maybe bubble mailers, possibly.
What's that?
The black padded things that the models come in.
Yeah.
We don't, I mean, they come to us that way from Canada, so we've never had to purchase them, so I don't know their official technical name.
Mix a little bit of bright neutral gray in with the dark warm gray. My brush is, we're using the same brush that I've been smudge blending with, so my tip is kind of screwed here. Bear with me as we.
Then 411, you're starting with a doozy. That's a big one, but it'll be worth it.
What's that?
First time putting together a creature caster model, the Queen of Malefica.
There you go. You're starting off. You definitely are jumping off the deep end, man. That's a good one.
Seems that fine acrylic filler is now my best friend.
Oh, because filling the gaps on the Malefica.
Oh.
He's got a lot of integrated parts that have to go together there. Faux show.
Lazy Dargan. Keeping me busy, which I appreciate.
Okay. Give it more texture along that line. Right. I'm actually going to put the darkness.
I like your styles in.
Putting a little bit of dark reflection right up towards the front. Wasn't happy with the way it looked with that little bit of brightness there, so I'm overdoing that. right? And darken that up at the front a little bit like that. And then we take a little bit more of our bright neutral gray. Thin down quite a bit. So I can come in here and get that brightness back where we painted that line real close. A little bit right at the point. Then back here.
Russ, your earlier question about the wireless mic, I honestly don't know, but I see the note for it right here next to me, so I'm guessing no. But soon.
It's not fair to ask every day, right? It's just not fair to ask every day.
He does have a reminder note, though. It's right here.
But the problem with me and my reminder notes is I forget to look at them.
He doesn't look at his reminder notes because he leaves them here.
And if I take a nice wet glaze of this, right, like so, I can bring that back through this because I want this to be even duller appearing because it's down in the shadow, but I want to have that brightness kind of extend out on the rest of the blade. I can very quickly just kind of glaze a little bit more shine out towards that edge. Right. So now I've got an edge that faces downward, doesn't have any direct light hitting it. Now you could argue that there would be some reflection from the ground that would reflect up here, so you could create some artificial bright spots in here to make it, but I think that on this model right now, this probably does the best job of creating that edge. Here we've got darkness where maybe there's the ground reflecting directly here. Maybe this, as it pendulums down, gets a little closer, is our reflection off of a stone or whatever off in the distance, right? So we get a little bit of brightness with that final glaze that comes through, gives us a good blend through there. A little bit of dark reflection at the end, right? And bingo. All right. Questions? Shoo-woo, what's going on? Why start small? No reason at all.
Exactly.
Like Russ says. So I've seen it come up and we've answered it. We started yesterday. So as Monument goes into retail, because our goal in 2020, like hashtag goals for 2020, assuming we get out of this COVID thing with all of our parts intact, our goal for this year was to be able to reach out into retailers. We have a tremendous amount of stores interested in carrying the product. We're setting up a direct to retail, not going through distribution. And in order to handle direct to retail, we need to start branding, focus branding, like Russ said. That's a word we came up with yesterday. Focus branding, so that people understand what Monument Hobbies is, what the product offering is, because it's different than Creature Caster. Creature Caster includes mainly the models is the first thing people think about, and then the hobby products become secondary because it's Monument Hobbies and you buy them on Creature Caster. But we're focusing that, and so as we go out to retail, because you will not see the models in retail, initially at least, and not for some time. So we didn't want that confusion as we start marketing in retail, because in the stores on the racks, the paint racks that we're designing will say Monument Hobbies, have the Pro Acryl logo and all of that. We want to have that immediately identifiable to the brand and all the other products that the brand carries, and not just having like, the Creature Caster thing on it. So you'll start seeing a more focused branding around the hobby products themselves as the months progress. So it's a great thing. It's all big thumbs up stuff. Magos is like hashtag Mike soon. Everything's soon. When's it going to happen? Soon. Is there a specific name for those? Oh, yeah, you just asked that. I'm like black padded bags? What? All right. So do we want to continue on? Ski, are you out there? Are you getting it? Are you kind of understanding? What are we doing? What do you want to see? I want to make sure, because Ski asked the question, I want to make sure we focus in on what Ski was looking for, but also make this, you know, something that is palatable and understandable for more people as we go along, right? Ground Zero, what's happening? Jen gonna have to run the streams once I start jetting off to open retail store launches. Yeah, I know, right? Where does all the time come from? Getting it and just following along? Yeah, so right now with kind of a dull metallic, but you can see how hopefully you're starting to pick up the reflections and you're starting to get that feel of hard, shiny object kind of thing going on here. How do you, for the flat surface, so like on the face here, help me understand what you mean by flat, GDAX. Like here on the face? Okay. So a flat surface is, I don't know if they're easier or more complicated. I guess it depends on how your brain wraps itself around all of this, right? So for me, I would look at this and I would say, okay, let's start with my dark neutral gray. And I would, with this light reflecting coming around here, shows me up above, I probably have a glow on this edge, right? And so then I blend out this way. So I'm going to do my, this is going to be tough for me with this brush. I probably should pick a different brush.
Hunt you down like 3 more hours. So stay. We'll be here.
I'm going to do a sloppy blend here real quick. Hashtag sloppy blends. This brush was the wrong brush for this. So I've been beating the crap out of it on other surfaces. Right now I need a little bit more pinpoint precision. I'm getting it. Not too shabby. Okay. Right, so just kind of a linear blend on that, but notice how I'm keeping the dark reflection kind of going up along the side here a bit. Matter of fact, I probably want to spread that out a little bit. So, then I'll go in, take my brightest color right here at the face, up at the upper left, our upper left, where I decided that was going to happen. Then I'll just kind of stipple it down. Right. Clear my brush out. And just kind of flatten my brush. Just kind of stipple and push blend that to give it a little bit of a glare. See, I've got my brush all fanned out. Just going to kind of poke and prod along this so I can get it to kind of pull out and give me a starburst kind of reflection there. So, and bingo. That's what I would do on that piece. Can we show Aptifine Jen's, what do we say? Can we show on the twins? Get your twins. What's the question on them? Jen's twins. So good. That girl over there painted this.
Finish it. Back part, I need your help.
Still looking,
You said you would do that for me.
still looking good. Oh, the back part back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got to
airbrush.
create what we did with the cloth with the
Yeah.
airbrush with brush. Yep. I got work to do.
No, you said you would airbrush it.
Oh, I might be able to.
Yeah.
And just mask it off.
Thank you.
There you go. That?
I had loads of fun at the beginning, and then as I got further and further and further along, I stopped. Like, I just got blocked. I didn't know what to do. So it's set off to the side for now. And that's about how all of my creature caster models have been.
From Aptifine. Oh, Aptifine, did you post something? I missed it. Need your opinion. The twins want to do the female snake body in dark purple and the male in black green. Kind of like it, but wobbly. Wobbly on the color choice. Dark purple and black green. And then just and brighten up to kind of a like a pale purple. Are you thinking about, and then black green up to this, because those work really well. If you went black green to like bright pale green, or at least use bright pale green to mix in to lighten it up, and then faded plum into the dark purple, those colors would work really well in the end. I don't know that you go that bright, but working through those colors, these two work very well. Dark Spock, what's going on? Going up to skin color. Oh, okay, gotcha. But fleshy colors. Yeah, definitely. The purple and green shadows on that would work great. Yeah, we do a lot of 40K stuff. As a matter of fact, what we're painting tonight, what we're really focused on, is one of the creature caster, the Lord of Virulence, which is my one of my demon princes for my Death Guard army. Right? And so we're focused on doing some wet blending on his skin, getting some really nasty skin colors going on him. And so we're going to be doing some more work on him. But yeah, I'm doing a Death Guard army. So there's a lot of traditional GW models here, right? So like my actual Death Guard dudes are in this color scheme. So we're kind of, I don't know, 60% done with this guy, 75% done with this guy. I don't know. We're not done. Still a lot of parts to paint. But this is kind of my test model for getting the way that I want the general color scheme to work laid out, and I'm very happy with it right now. Using metallic paints that I don't do a whole lot of, so I haven't weathered the bronze back down yet, which I need to do and add some tarnish to it. But in general, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing with those guys. So we've got all sorts of cool things going on with our Death Guard. I'm really digging them. It's a fun army to paint. So stick around. You'll see lots of work on those in the coming days, weeks, months, years, probably. I never finish anything. That's my claim to fame. If you want to see how to spend 80 million hours on a model and never see it finished, I'm your guy.
Tommy Lee Gunn, yeah, the Princess Bride minis are pretty much done. The whole set is pretty much done. Those were super fun. I want more like that. I need to put in the request for Tom from Impact to see if he can make me some grease miniatures.
The whole line of grease miniatures would be so
amazing.
good. That would be so good. War Pig. It's been bantered around. So I won't say no. John Bingham, what's happening, man? Like your sticker? I like giving people stickers. I think stickers are fun.
I put stickers in all the different orders.
Ground Zero, thank you. I hope that this has helped. It's a very quick study in a couple of different shapes. I hope that does the job. Aces High, what is going on? Thank you for that Twitch Prime sub. Welcome. So just a quick way to get us started on making kind of dull metallic. Now, one of the things that we didn't really talk about is Darth Spock. Thank you so much for the follow. One of the things that we didn't talk about is, I'm not going to put him there. I'll get paint all over him. We put him here. I'm getting smarter. I'm trying not to be super duper messy with stuff, but doesn't always work. One of the things that we didn't mention is, what if you wanted to give a little bit of color to this, right? Like color in the distance. Maybe there's blue sky, maybe there's, battleground and bloods and stuff like that. So you can do all sorts of stuff. Let's just take a color. Let's take a burnt sienna and jade. We'll take burnt sienna and jade. Here's two weird colors. So burnt sienna will give us an amazing kind of rust tone. And jade is just kind of a weird, it'll give us a weird environmental color. I don't like to do non-metallic metal with reflections that actually have a story unless the model really allows me to. Sometimes like we'll have, where's what's his nuts? This guy. This guy that we started a long time ago with the breastplate that has like the polished silver breastplate and then the bright gold on it. And I started playing around with like the reflections and what they might be on the breastplate. And so in there we might have some colors coming out. So this might be a person, and if that person's dressed in blue, maybe we put some blue, and maybe we do reflections that actually show as being something in the distance, a light, something specific. You can do that and get away with it and do really well. But on the model, it really needs to be able to tell that story. If you try to force it onto too small, generally we're talking about scale, right? If you try to force like the reflection of a forest on this blade, you're probably telling a story you'd be better suited spending your time doing something else on this model than trying to paint like trees reflected on your sword. Because as a focus point on the model, it's such a small piece that you wind up wasting a lot of time, and it can mess up what is otherwise, the appearance that you're going for. In this case, kind of dull metal, right? But what I can do is I can come over here and I get a bunch of water on my brush, and I'm just going to tap it in there into my burnt sienna so I get a very, very thin material going here, right? And that's going to be my glaze, right? And so now we're talking about this, right? I can come in and get that kind of coloring, right? See how it's just barely making any difference on my thumb palette here. And I can come in here, and generally I want to see those colors in the shadow right as it starts coming out of the brightness. In general. The brightness area will saturate your vision and eliminate any color that might have been there. Right? But I can start throwing in color as it comes right out of the bright area.
Russ, anytime you see that, you can assume it was intentional.
Right. I can start throwing a little bit of color in there. I don't know if that's even picking up for you guys on the camera. And we're doing this as a glaze because we weren't blending it in with our colors initially. You could also have started adding this color into your gray and got, achieved a very similar result. So like up here, we take this jade and push it into our colors coming out of the shine area into those mid-tones and darkness up here. Use my finger to do a little bit of smudge blending on that. And just kind of smudging it a little bit with my finger. Acts as a blending stick for when you're doing dry, you're trying to blend over dry paint. So I can just kind of hit it real quick. And I can start adding in small changes in color there. And I'm doing it very faint to start with so I can get a bead on it, figure out how I want to maneuver it around. It might be that you have a particular light source in your painting that you want to go with. And so you might want to try to stick that color on here. If you've got like, a glowing lantern, you want to put the glowing lantern reflected on here. All of that's fair game. right? So you can get very subtle shifts. Now, if you wanted to then do more dramatic rust, I don't know why the blade would be rusted. That means he's not really fighting a whole lot, but you can throw in more. Just remember that your color won't live where your blade is brightest, right? Up close you can see how sporadic our blends have been on this thing, right? But wherever the blade is the brightest, that light is reflecting back and it's saturating this entire surface to where you lose all that color, right? As it becomes more and more reflective, remember your brightness draws back further and further, right? And their contrast sits right on the edge, and then your color can get closer and closer to your brightness. But as the metal is dull, the brightness exaggerates that shine and then comes out here, and then you start finding color right at the edge as it starts coming out. And then of course if it's reflective again, you might find more color out here and so on and so forth. But you can get like little subtle spurts of color in here. I've got this that comes around here and down here. I could tuck it into the corner, kind of right in here to tie it together if I wanted to make it seem like this was reflecting something. Right. And just play. So you can do it that way by glazing it in at the end, or if you're doing it while you're painting, right? So if I were to, let's do the back side of this blade real quick. For anybody just joining us, we got asked in chat how to do non-metallic metal in silver. So we're just doing very, very quick kind of stabs of color here. I need more of my dark neutral gray. To get a feel for painting reflective surfaces, right? Because the goal here is to learn how to know where light and how light reflects off of different shapes. That's really what we talk about when we talk about non-metallic metal. Don't get lost in the fact that I'm doing gold, but I don't know how to do silver. We've had that comment in chat. You know how to do silver if you know how to do gold. It's just a color choice thing, right? It's learning where to place the reflections that is the tough part. Right? So if we come in here on the back side of this blade, let's say we know we're going to be brighter on this down here, and then darker right there, and then it has another little hump, and then dark, and then another little hump here, and then dark. Right? So dark neutral gray. Right. Now if I wanted to, I could then now start taking a little bit of this, working out of that brightness, and I can start putting this rust into my gray if I want. Just kind of wet blending it in there before doing any of the rest of this. Actually, I'm not blending, so I need to mix this on the palette here a little bit. So. I'm not really worried about this entire thing. I'm just trying to get the point across on the bottom end of the blade. We could go for hours on the rest of this thing. Better love me, Ski.
Oh, you asked if you could also put this on YouTube.
Yeah, probably. We could probably port this over. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for this. Right.
Mako said, please make part 2 of this a tutorial on curved surfaces like a helm or breastplate.
Like what?
A helm or breastplate.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the difference with curves is that you don't have all these linear blends, right? You've got to wind up doing elliptical blending, which is what hangs people up the most on those types of shapes, I think. It's fair to say.
Zen411 said, Creature Caster should include a note in the assembly instructions for the queen. To optimally put this model together, you should have as many hands as the queen.
There's a lot going on there, right? Not gonna lie. Then, like we did on the underside of the blade, I'm just gonna take that bright neutral gray. I'm gonna glaze it down towards our bright spot coming out of the shadows, right over that rust color that we put in there, that burnt sienna. Trying to show you a bunch of different ways that you can get kind of the same thing going on if you're not as comfortable with your blends. You want to still get it to look smooth. Just do that kind of rough blend that I just did, and then come in here and kind of just real quick glaze your brighter color over it in the end. Right. So a couple different methods, but they all achieve very, very similar results. The goal being to place your brightest reflections where they need to go. Don't ever forget your edge highlighting, right? Metallic edges are all going to radiate light from the brightest spot outward. So wherever it's bright and that brightness hits the edge, like right here at this point, it'll even radiate down here a little bit, right here on the back edge through this center part up, right? So on and so forth. You don't want to just outline all of these things and have like a solid white line along here and a solid white line here and a solid white line along the bottom of the blade. You want to kind of blend those together so they come and go as you need them to, right? And eventually you wind up getting, exactly what you want. Right?
BD's 315 said, glazing light grays and whites. What is this sorcery?
Pro acrylic paint, man.
Pro acryl.
It's our paint. That's one of the reasons why we made our paint, right? Is that you just don't get really good hobby whites at all.
I mean, this is orange, but this is stuff.
Right. Adding a little bit more dark reflection on here just to finalize it all up as I'm looking at it. Now, even though this is a test model, right? We're just showing this for a tutorial. I get carried away. So bear with me. All right. Drop a little bit of darker reflection right here in this pocket here, right here, up in here. We've already got some darkness on those. Can probably find a couple right next to like some of these cracks in the blade. And just kind of bring that all the way out against the edge to break the edge up too, huh?
Don't hold back on account of me, Chief Nate. You buy as much as you want. I will never complain.
Okay. There you go. Fast and very sloppy. I apologize we didn't spend a lot of time on the blends, but the idea there is to get you comfortable with figuring out how to place your reflections and both dark and bright reflections. Because remember, the term shadow will throw you off. It is not a shadow. It is a reflection of an object. A reflection of an object will register as darker, and a reflection of light will register as brighter. So whether the object is a plant, a person, a rock, a building, the horizon line, it's always going to be darker, but it doesn't have to be black, right? It can be, if there's a person up front, it can wind up being, flesh tone reflection, right? Like we showed you in the spoon, right? The reflection of my finger is skin colored. It's just darker than the actual finger. So just remember that. Like if you want to have a reflection of a tree painted, don't paint the tree the bright green you really want the tree. It's darker with just a little bit of green, right? If you paint it like bright skin color like my finger, right, it's going to look like a spilled paint finger on there. Right? Because the light coming back at you is never as intense as the light as it hits the surface. Unless it's an actual polished mirror, then it can be very close, right? But you will get color out of that the more reflective it is. But the duller it is, remember, right? So like this sword wouldn't throw a bunch of color back at you. It just becomes darkness, right? As we get, if we can even get my finger on there, right? Yeah, see? Less flesh tone on this because the light that's hitting back off of the object to our eye is diffused. So we get less of that color. There's a little bit of a flesh tone if I get real close. Yeah, you can start seeing flesh tone as I get right on the deal, but here an inch away, it's just a dark reflection. You can do that in grays. Whereas on the spoon, see that's this far away, about an inch away, right? And it's less flesh, more just dark tones. Whereas that same distance on this polished surface, much more flesh tone, right? Same light angle. Now, yeah, it's a curved surface and all that, but that doesn't really matter. That doesn't change anything. It's just more polished, even though it's dingy. It gives more reflection, so it's also going to throw color directly back at you. In the diffused situation, so dirty metal, you'll spend less time putting colored reflection on this type of non-metallic than you will as you get more polished, as you start putting in more contrast and more shininess on a piece, then you can start to pick up color. All right? Hopefully that helps.
I was showing someone the Pro Acryl White.
That's how you do it. Now we got to put all this paint away.
Bull Titanium White. The paint that started it all.
And realize we didn't even use any white on that one.
Oh well, because Wheaties said light grays and whites, so
Yeah.
I was showing the white.
Yeah, on this, the brightest we went was bright neutral gray.
Oh, I don't have that one in front of me.
Right. Because if you're not super reflective, the need for white goes way down. You can leave it in just whatever your brightest gray is. If this became a shiny surface, more polished like the spoon, I would probably do a little bit of hint of white along its edge, right? Because white, that's a good study to do here. Let's take a little bitty pinch of white. Right, notice we don't have any white on here. So add a little drop of white there. Zoom in. And watch what, I'm going to get a different brush, because using a number 3 for this is probably a little idiotic.
What are you going to use instead?
Number 1. So number 1 det court instead, just to get a little bit more of a fine point, because at this stage, we're not trying to put a lot of paint, right? This is one of those, the smallest amount of paint has the biggest effect. So let's drop in right here on this kind of specular highlight.
Ski, you're amazing too. All of you guys are. We couldn't do what we do without you guys.
Right. Bang in a little white there in that upper corner. Get some right out on this brightest spot of the tip. Just the tip. Right? And notice what just a little bit of white does. Right? It's not horrible. Don't get carried away with it on something where you're painting it to be dull and not super reflective, because you can see what a big impact pure white has. It's the brightest color you got at your disposal, so use it sparingly because you can't go any brighter.
And Doka, yes, all of you. Just Hanley, yeah, we could go out and find other people, but that would be a lot of work. You guys are already here.
And we kind of like you guys.
Yeah.
At least that's what we say to your face. You guys are the greatest. I don't know what you're...
Lord Wedge, did you get a completed email? Like, is it on the way? Or are you waiting still for that even? And are you in the US?
So bingo, there you go. A little bit of white on that just to punch up the brightness and see what a big effect that white had. That white really now blows out the contrast on those points where we hit it. Right? And I like that a lot. I really like the way our jade came out right here on this underspot. It really gives it the feel like this part of the blade is like facing the ground because I get that just that hint of blue-green in there. Right? I got a little bit of it up here, and I got that punch of it that I put down there, and I think that was perfect. Right? So not a bad gig. So hopefully that helps. We'll put him back on the shelf.